I'm not convinced in any way that a scripted process actually changes people, anyone. Programs, silver bullet type thinking, it all falls short. It may not be wrong, but it falls short. You know, the true change that we're all knowing we need to say yes to in our lives, the true change that we are hopeful happens. And for some of us, and I think honestly all of us, maybe we're not thinking about those things as often. We're drawn to our comforts, we're drawn to stability and the predictability, to controlling outcomes in our own lives. These last 2 weeks, as we've closed this series, The Pursuit, God's steadfast love, it has all of our change in view, but I want to wrap this series up and help us take a step forward here toward what we're going to be studying together as a church and what we're going to be doing going forward this year, is to be very honest that God's not interested in just, polishing up the outside so we look a little bit better and behave a little bit better. From the very beginning, the whole story has been that God has a family, lives with that family. It's large, it's populating the earth, it's filling the earth, it's taking care of the earth, it's taking care of each other. There's no sin, there's no wickedness, there's no evil, there's no self-centeredness, there's no pride, there's no glory seeking, there's no laziness, there's no perpetual sadness or fear or anything. So this series that we finished this last Sunday, in these last 2 weeks, January 1st and January 8th, looking at Luke chapter 17, verse 20 through chapter 18, verse 8. The reason I wanted to end this series with that language and to bring into view what God's steadfast love is about, it ultimately ends with God separating finally and totally wickedness from his family. And so that's going to happen on earth. That's going to happen in real time, in the same way that the sun rose this morning and it'll set this evening. God is going to judge in the end and bring final justice to everything. And so Luke 18, 1 through 8, Jesus is telling a parable in light of people who may be prone to hold on to their possessions and their comforts and their stability that they think they find here on this earth because of the things that they do or the way that they feel. And I can't say that strongly enough. Jesus warns people who are prone to hold on to their feelings as a trustworthy way of living. And he tells them there's a final judgment which will separate wickedness from his family. And it is absolutely necessary to understand which side of the equation we're on in that. And so he warns, but he also exhorts his people, his disciples in Luke 18. He tells them a parable to be desperate in prayer. Persistent prayer is a necessary part of an honest heart. So true change for us as Christians will only come when we have a totally honest moment to acknowledge what God has said, what God has done, and the cross of Jesus Christ is an absolute non-negotiable centerpiece to that narrative. What we do with it then determines whether or not we are the people that when Jesus returns will be the people that he looks to and discovers, yes, we have trusted him still. Even if our experiences here are shallow, even if our Sunday morning church services feel some sort of way, or our jobs feel some sort of way, or our experiences with culture feel some sort of way, irrespective of our feelings and our experiences here, we know and trust God's provision in Jesus Christ and that he will reconcile all things. And so we then, as followers of him and those who place our trust in him, our true change begins the moment we receive, accept, believe, trust, with whatever level of depth we have, his story about us and his story for us. So here's what I want to encourage you to apply this week following this series. It certainly has to do with prayer. There's no question. But even in that prayer, don't allow your mind to pray for the things that draw our attention back to the distractions of this world. Pray for God's kingdom, where he reigns and he rules, and his judgments are true and his judgments come through. Pray for that in you and everything around you. Ask God to do to you and through you whatever he wants for the sake of his name, his glory, and his work, and just trust him. Not our experiences, not our feelings, not our preferences, not our ideas about this life and what we even think should be or ought to be, but instead just believe what he says is true and do whatever he tells you to do. Rely on his counsel, his advice, what he says about you and what he says about the world. This week, we transition to begin 1 Peter. So I want to encourage you to start reading it. But in reading it, please understand, I hope you can rest in this. Remember what Jesus has brought to you, to be a part of God's permanent family forever. And while we experience what we do here, remember God's love for you, his steadfast love, because his pursuit of finishing his story will always include ours, and ours will always include his, if we will trust what he said. Have a great week. We'll see you this Sunday right here at 10 a.m.